Very warm good morning to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we discuss the Delhi edition of today's The Hindu newspaper, analyze the articles which are relevant for your examination, both for the prelims as well as the mains. But the discussion shall not only be restricted to the articles themselves. Wherever possible, the surrounding areas from where the questions can also be asked, that is also something that we shall pick up for the discussion. At the end of this analysis, we shall be discussing two subjective type, mains type questions which can be framed from this and analyze the important answer writing skills that you need to inculcate, that you need to develop in order to improve your craft. Now, these daily analysis videos that we come up with every day at 10 a.m. Now, this is first of all aimed at improving your current affairs understanding. But most importantly, developing a perspective into how an issue shapes up, how to take a look at the various different peripheral angles for any particular topic. This is what will benefit you when it comes to essay writing, overall answer writing in the mains, and at various stages of the examination, including the interview stage. So if you like this initiative of ours, please do provide us with your blessings in the form of as many likes, share, and the subscribes that you can. And if the content is something which is understandable, which has benefited you, then do comment and do tell us and do let us know about your feedback. Now, having said that, let us take a look at the topics that we are going to discuss today. So today in total we are going to discuss around 9 different topics, 3 of them in slightly greater detail for the relevance of the mains examination, stabilizing India-Nepal ties in changing times. So here we shall be talking about, and the article basically talks about the challenges that these ties face and what is it that we can do going ahead, and a brief background of the tumultuous ties that we have been facing. This is relevant for your GS paper 2. Then, declining poverty ratio, a continuing trend. Now, this is as per the household consumption expenditure survey which was released. This is relevant for your GS paper 3. Then an overview of the Smart City Mission. So this is about the analysis of Smart City Mission program which was launched in the previous term of the government, and the success and the failures about it, and what can we learn going ahead forward. This is relevant again in your JS paper 2 and even GS paper 3. Now, few of the articles we are going to discuss for your prelims perspective: food inflation scaled a 4-month high, India-Iran signed Chabahar port operations pact, UN-linked body that is Gandhi defers accreditation of National Human Rights Council India, IMF warns Maldives of debt distress with respect to China, and Mount Ibu has erupted, where it is and why it has erupted. The Semal trees, which are also referred to as a one-tree sanctuary or a one-tree biosphere. What are these Semal trees? That is also something we are going to discuss. Now, before coming to the topics, a couple of announcements regarding your preparation for prelims. In order to streamline your preparation, we are coming up on a daily basis with programs and question-based discussion both on YouTube as well as on the app. So join us at 6 p.m. on the app for the special class dealing with the portion of international relations, and at 7:30 p.m. join us on YouTube regarding the session for Indian economy, where we shall be discussing the important topics for the prelims with the help of the MCQs. Now, the second announcement regarding the optionals. Now, owing to huge demand and huge request, it gives us immense joy to announce that we are launching the comprehensive optional program for geography as an optional subject. So that is geography optional in English medium will be launched for the first time on Unacademy platform from the month of June onwards. So do join us and do engage in that geography optional study. You can join us on the Telegram link and thereby further your understanding of what is required for geography as an optional and how to improve there. Now, coming to the first topic of the day, that is stabilizing India-Nepal ties in the changing times. Now, what is this topic about? This topic, which is co-authored by the previous India's ambassador to Nepal, talks about the fact that how Nepalese kingdom, the erstwhile kingdom, now a constitutional democracy, is facing lot of destabilizing factors within itself. And that particular country is in the midst of oftentimes a political turmoil induced by different parties and sometimes even by foreign interference. Now, for those of us who don't have that good a background about what is going on in Nepal, what has been happening in Nepal, let me fill you in with a brief background. Now, Nepal would be the world's last Hindu monarchy and the Hindu kingdom which was present across the world, where even though the governance and the government fundamentals had some secular leanings and secular basics, but then still officially it was a Hindu kingdom. Now, the king, the last popular king, that was King Birendra, was shot down in a kind of an assassination across the Nepalese palace in 2001, and the entire royal family, other than his younger brother, was assassinated. Now, his younger brother followed King Birendra to the throne. The younger brother, named King Gyanendra, he was not as popular as his older brother. And as long as King Birendra was there on the throne, Indo-Nepal ties were doing particularly good. There were some grievances amongst the Nepalese masses, etc., that the development is not happening at the pace that his predecessor, King Mahendra, promised. So there were some grievances, but largely the people of the kingdom were happy with the governorship of King Birendra. Now, when King Gyanendra took over, all the various different dissatisfied voices which are present in Nepal, including the rising Maoist insurgencies, and the public opinion in itself was never in favor of King Gyanendra. Now, these Maoists, they started blockading Kathmandu, and under the reign of King Gyanendra, there was also this unique and sad, unfortunate event where Kathmandu was blockaded by the Maoists. Nobody was allowed to come in or go out. It is suspected that the Maoists would receive arms, ammunitions, and support from the People's Liberation Army of China. And sadly, as the Maoist leaders also later confirmed, that they had some amount of ideological support from few of the leaders of India as well. Now, thereby the Maoists, they started gathering and capturing the popular public perception. The public also started thinking that these are the individuals who will do good for us. And that is where the clamor call and overall the demand grew, that abolish that Hindu state and thereby establish a new federal system, a new constitution, elect a new constituent assembly which will devise a new constitution, and we shall be a constitutional democracy. Now, this was the overall popular demand. King Gyanendra himself, not enjoying a maximum of its popularity and the declining power of the monarchy, eventually steered the country towards this particular route. Now, while there were significant number of supporters for Nepal to become a kind of a constitutional democracy, there was some amount of population which was uneasy with the change. They were very comfortable with the earlier stance of Nepal still being the Hindu kingdom monarchy. The new constituent assembly was elected. It was given a time period of 2 years to draft a new constitution. And this process, which started in 2008, did continue with a lot of turmoil, lot of uneasiness. Here, you would observe that in 2008, Nepal was declared as Federal Democratic Republic. That was a move away from monarchy. But the Constituent Assembly could not frame the constitution within the 2-year time period because of differences which existed in various different ethnic groups and ethnic basings. It was alleged that the Maoists, led by Prachanda or Pushpa Kamal Dahal, now basically they wanted to frame the constitution in order to suit them so that they could occupy power. That was the allegation. Similarly, the allegation from the side of the Maoists, that is led by Prachanda, now they had an allegation on KP Oli and other popular leaders of Nepal that you guys are delaying the entire process because you want to capture power. So this power-hungry battle between the various groups continued. Now after that, the term of Constituent Assembly in 2010 was extended further in order to have that constitution ready. Now, after lot of these interruptions, finally, a constitution was prepared. It was a very hastily prepared constitution and something that various civil society organizations, neighboring countries like India, all of them, they basically put out advices and put out certain suggestions that, look, constitution is not something, some report that you come out on a daily basis. Constitution can end up defining the future course that a country takes. So take your time, but make that constitution inclusive. Include all the groups in the Nepal, because Nepalese kingdom also, the people there, it is not like a monolith or a monoculture that everybody has got the same ethnic identity, etc. For example, in the new constitution which was drafted in Nepal, the Madhesis, basically the group of people who live in the boundary areas of India, share their boundary with the region of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, living in the Tarai belt of Nepal. Now the Madhesis, they felt excluded. And this is where the Madhesis and those groups basically share the cultural and relational ties with people in India across the border. So India as a neighbor and India thinking that it maintained cross-cultural ties felt a bit aggrieved. And India made its displeasure known to Nepal in the clearest terms. India imposed an economic blockade at the border of Nepal, where goods from India, be it pharmaceuticals, be it fuel, nothing was allowed to go into Nepal. Nepal plunged into an economic crisis, where medicine shortage, fuel shortage, food shortage became the norm. And this, as a moment, was utilized to fuel anti-India sentiments. And anti-India sentiments, there are a lot of people who want to instigate these anti-India sentiments. You have players like Pakistan, which has always been sort of active in the region of Nepal because it sees Nepal as an easy entry way into India in order to carry out smuggled goods, in order to carry out contraband, in order to sneak in terrorists. And so is the case with China. China also sees Nepal as the soft boundary point of India, where India can be bled through. So these anti-India sentiments were fueled. And slowly and steadily, you had the uneasy phase of relationship between India and Nepal that started growing up. Then, a few years back, you had another dispute which erupted, which flared up. And that was when India constructed a road with the help of a border road organization. It constructed a road across the Lipu Lake Pass. The Lipu Lake Pass, Lipu Lake. Now the Lipu Lake Pass in the region of Uttarakhand, it lies at a tri-junction between India, Nepal and China. Now China all its while when negotiating with India, had considered this area as an official border trading point between India and China. But as soon as a road was constructed there, due to Chinese interference and instigation, Nepal stood up in arms against this road constructed by India. They claimed that it is a part of Nepalese territory which India is trying to capture and occupy. India on its part argued that, look, this is a region which has always stayed with us, and this is the route which is used for Mansarovar Yatra. It is not something that we are doing in order to threaten Nepal, but it is something that we are doing in order to improve the connectivity for the pilgrims who take a very arduous and a difficult journey to reach there. So that was the argument that India put. Obviously, if you take a look at the entire picture, India also wanted to bolster its border defense owing to the Doklam issue and the Doklam crisis which had erupted. But the ties with Nepal, at least the public sentiment, that started moving downhill. Now, this was followed by the Nepalese foreign minister's visit to Beijing. Generally, the trend or the tradition has been, when a new government is elected, let's suppose in Nepal, or let's suppose a new ruler comes in Bhutan, or let's suppose a new government in Maldives, generally the trend has been that the first official visit is to India, owing to the big brotherly relationship that India has with them. But nowadays, we are observing a departure from that because the heads of state, the foreign ministers, they are making their visit to Beijing first. So that happened with the case of Nepal also. That further put India on its toes. Now, amidst all this uncertainty, Nepal has largely been reduced to a bone of contention now between India and China. And what lies in between are a group of political leaders from Prachanda to KP Sharma Oli, all of them basically trying to extract as much as possible and thereby go for merrymaking. Right. So that is where Nepalese kingdom has been shunted into a kind of a political turmoil, a political uncertainty, where the public on the large numbers nowadays, they are also seeking a return to the earlier situation. Let's return back to the days of the monarchy and the Hindu kingdom, because those were the days of prosperity. Because obviously, when you think about the public memory, they compare the situations. They're not concerned with whether there is an external interference or not. They are largely going to compare their condition. What is my condition today? What was the condition of the country 15 years back? Once they see that today's condition is more uncertain, they would obviously want to switch back to the earlier times. This is what has put a lot of various angles and uncertainty in the case of Nepal. Now here, first of all, when we talk about the Indo-Nepalese relationship, what are the various thorns in the pathway? What are the various issues? So when we talk about issues, let us understand them. The issues in India-Nepal relation. What are the various issues? The first issue is the interference of China. That is something that India doesn't like. But think about it from the perspective of a country like Nepal. If you are Nepal, you would see that, okay, a large superpower in the region is ready to invest in us, and an emerging superpower is also ready to invest in us. So why not get some money from Beijing also, get some help from Delhi also, so that we can develop. But both of them, they tend to act against each other. That is what has put a kind of a thorn. So Chinese interference is significant. Interference. This is a major issue, which raises a lot of suspicions in New Delhi also, and a lot of suspicions in Beijing also. So obviously, Kathmandu is someone which oscillates in between. Now, the other issue. Now, there have been various different areas where mistrust between India and Nepal has accelerated. For example, what you see here, that in 2014, Narendra Modi became the first Prime Minister to visit Nepal after a gap of around 17 years. That was considered to be a landmark event. When he addressed the parliament, there were thunderous applauses and loud cheering, which in a way was signifying the fact that Indo-Nepal relations are doing good. Now, very soon in 2015, in the month of April, when the earthquake struck Nepal, immediately India, within a span of a few hours, sent its rescue forces in Nepal. India was a major helper in terms of its rescue. But owing to certain media reports in the later part of the rescue phase, when the rescue was almost done, few of the media reports from our side basically wanted to portray India as the ultimate rescuer-in-chief who has saved Nepal from the brink of extinction. Now understand one thing. Any nation, big or small, they have their own self-respect and sovereignty that people care about and that people are proud about. Now, when these news stories started doing the rounds, there was a large-scale citizen disillusionment and citizens were dissatisfied that look at what India is doing. So this was a kind of a mistrust which happened. Immediately, India was in a way forced to pull out all of its rescue missions and all its rescue personnel because of the growing distrust, mistrust and a sort of growing anger. Then again, in 2016, in the midst of that citizen sentiment, India imposed a blockade, right? A blockade which included a blockade of sending medicines or lack of fuel. Anything was not sent to Nepal, which pushed the people into further calamity. So there have been multiple such issues which have increased the mistrust. Right? So these are the small issues which are not particularly well in terms of Indian sentiments. Smaller issues of mistrust. Now, which are those smaller issues? You have, for example, owing to the Nepal's constitution, not the formation of Nepal, but the constitution of Nepal. Then, owing to the rescue rehabilitation after earthquakes, that was also a major spark. Right? So these are small issues. Then India had operated various developmental projects in Nepal for some time now, for decades now, be it construction of dams, hydroelectric power generation, housings, etc. But our own track record in terms of developmental projects being implemented are not very good, to be very moderate. Right? Not very good if I am being very mild about it. They are disastrous when compared to other countries' efforts such as China. When China enters into a country with a developmental project, it sticks to the timeline, it completes it and thereby improves its credibility. But Indian developmental projects being implemented in Nepal in particular was something which fell into the trap of the bureaucracy, corruption of the local politicians there and met with inordinate delays. So that is where the goodwill which India wanted to develop by spending the money, that goodwill was lost. So poor implementation of projects. Then after that, our relationship with Nepal has always been like a big brother, small brother. But no country wants to be bullied or even seen to be bullied. When we talk about our relationship with US, for example, at any point of time, if US starts issuing directives to us that this is what you should do, this is what India is doing wrong, look at the anger which develops in our country. In all fairness, US is much more powerful than us, much better economy than us in terms of per capita income, etc. wealthier than us. So there also it is a big brother, small brother relation. But we have our own national pride, due to which we feel a significant amount of anger developing whenever we see that kind of a advice. So India also, when it issues those kinds of directives, those kinds of advice for the Nepalese people, it hardly creates a good sentiment. So that big brother attitude has become a bone of contention. That is why for the past few years, India has been doing particularly well in keeping or maintaining a silent stance. India is not taking political side, but maintaining a silent stance, because it can easily be used by other agencies and other countries to rouse up anti-India sentiments. So that is big brother attitude. And the article also talks about the fact that how this attitude of issuing directives, of providing suggestions, etc., that hurts the sentiments. Now see, there is no doubt that if push comes to shove, India is much more powerful than Nepal, much larger population, much superior military. But that is not how the world works. That if we compare it on that respect, then powerful militaries than India, they can subdue us. But that is not the case, right? So these are the various issues that are a bone of contention. And also another one, India and Nepal relation for a very long period of time had been going on autopilot. So there was not much of an effort which was paid in developing institution to institution cooperation, state to state cooperation, people to people developmental forums. So that institutional mechanism for cooperation, for example, what exists between India and US today? You have various different states which are also partnering with the US. You also have investments coming from US to India. You also have people-to-people public forum for discussion. So there is an organic growth of the relation. But with Nepal, it was not so. It was always, in a way, malnourished when it comes to the institutional mechanism. It worked on the kind of trust. So once the trust is broken, the relation has nothing to bank upon. So that is where lack of systematic relationship at all levels. Due to this, there has been a lack of trust. Now, what can be done going ahead? The article argues that the new government which will come to power after 4th of June will have the first task to sort out Nepal. But the similar argument has been made in the case of Maldives also. So what is it that we can do as we move ahead? What is the way forward here? Way forward basically has to be that, look, even if we know that Chinese interference is there in the governance, but if the larger public opinion is favoring China, we have to understand why is it so. Because in a way, China is seen to be a larger economic power which can benefit them. So India can help in developmental projects which will help the people directly, right? So targeted developmental projects, first of all. That is where India's implementation now has to be on point. Development project. This is one. Second, India need not express overtly its displeasure when it comes to a particular kind of a government, maybe of a particular political leaning, of a different political leaning. So India has to develop an apolitical stance and a state-to-state relationship, right? So apolitical stance. It has to build people-to-people contact. People-to-people contact. After that, India, which has got a very large and a booming private sector, can direct some of the investment in the region of Nepal, thereby providing a better earning, better livelihood to the people there, and also in a way earning goodwill. So encourage investments, because understand one thing, if Nepal develops, let's suppose Nepal does particularly good in terms of its economic growth and economic parameters, it will start to export also. It would want to improve its export basket. Now when Nepal wants to export something, the route presently which is economically viable passes through the region of India, through the states of Bihar, West Bengal, eventually through the port city around Haldia. That is how the goods will be transported. So that good, when they are transshipped through India, that will benefit India also. That will benefit the transporters and the economy of the local region. So the development of Nepal, well-being of Nepal is something which is in favor of India's economic development also. So that is something which should be promoted. Cultural ties, which goes back for millennia altogether. Cultural ties have to be reinvigorated and they have to be emphasized. Cultural ties can also be improved, right? These are the few things which can be done. If there is any other thing that you feel that can be done on your own level, if you can think about an innovative solution, then do put that in the comment section below. Having said that, a brief compilation of what we have discussed till now. When we talk about Indo-Nepal relationship, they are not in the best of terms because of political distrust or mistrust which has been rising up. Now, due to the political turmoil in the governance and the governmental setup in Nepal, India somehow has basically ended up on the wrong side of Nepalese citizens and their goodwill. Now, there are issues of Chinese interference, delayed developmental works by India, and also what is seen as a big brotherly attitude of India by the Nepalese citizenry, which are responsible for not such a good relationship of India as of now. Even though it started on a high from 2014, but then the situation deteriorated after 2015-16 onwards. The new government, when it comes to power, or the government, the establishment after June 4th, they have to take this task very seriously because of the growing Chinese interference. So what they can do is, they can work on the people-to-people ties, improve the trade, bring about investment, reinvigorate the cultural aspect and the ties there, focus on citizen-centric developmental approach, so that in the long run, we work towards the betterment of people in that area. That is the way forward. Okay? Now, after that, we come to the second article. Now, the second article is largely data-oriented. It talks about declining poverty ratio, a continuing trend, and it is basically based on the household consumption. Household consumption survey. Consumption expenditure survey. Now, who releases this? This survey is released by NSSO, National Sample Survey Office. They release this survey. Now, this survey result basically talks about the fact and gives you a reportage of what was the expenditure level earlier. What is the expenditure level now? We have discussed this in the previous newspaper analysis, so we shall not be going back to the survey once again, but we shall be extracting what is present in the article here. Now, the article talks about the fact that, look, the survey numbers have been released, but there are not a particular data pointer which is a larger overview is provided, but minutiae or minute details of that is something which the researchers are carrying out their individual research and bringing to light various different derivations that they can extract from that data. For example, based upon the expenditure survey, which indicated that the saving rate has gone down and the expenditure in the region of the urban areas, rural areas, they have largely shown a slight increase but remained almost consistent. Now, based upon those data pointers, the researchers have come to a conclusion that, look, poverty in India has indicated a decline. Now, when we say poverty in India has indicated a decline, now what is that poverty? So when we say poverty, there have been various parameters in India to measure poverty. For example, as per the World Bank and accepted norms there, anybody earning around less than $1.9, that is an individual who is put under the below the poverty line. But when it comes to India, India had set up various different commissions and committees in order to decide and determine what is the poverty line. What amount of money or expenditure should we consider that if you are spending this much, you are poor, you will be considered poor, or you will be considered above poverty line. So you had various different committees and panels, starting from the Lakdawala panel, eventually followed by Suresh Tendulkar committee, then followed by Rangarajan committee. So all of them did their own work in terms of deciding its poverty. So when we say poverty has declined, compared to what? So that is the data pointer that this entire article is revolving around. How the data pointers are measured, etc. But that is not something which is very relevant for your examination, because UPSC 1 year from now or even this year is not going to ask you that as compared to the Rangarajan committee poverty line, where the poverty has decreased from 29 to 11 or 29 to 15. That data-centric questions are not asked. So we shall utilize this article to understand some of the basic nuances which are highlighted. For example, the data pointers indicate that the poverty has declined, but declined differently when you compare it to the Rangarajan committee declaration of poverty line or the Tendulkar committee decision on poverty line. So as per the Rangarajan committee, Rangarajan as in C. Rangarajan, as per the Rangarajan committee, this poverty has declined from 29.5% in 2011-12 to how much? To roughly around 10% in 2022-23. So you might think this is huge, right? But this is as per the poverty line that Rangarajan committee had announced. We'll come to it. What was the poverty line? On what basis Rangarajan committee put forward its recommendation? Everything we will discuss about. But then you also had, prior to Rangarajan committee, in 1999, the government of India had set up a Suresh Tendulkar committee. Right. So when you hear about Tendulkar committee, don't think about Sachin Tendulkar for a brief moment. This is Suresh Tendulkar committee for the deciding of the poverty line. So when we talk about Tendulkar committee, right? So as per the Tendulkar committee report, it declined from 29% in 2011-12 to 3% in 2022-23. So that means overall trend is what? That the poverty rate is declining. By how much? That is a point in contention. But it is declining. It is declining at a rate of around 1.77% every year taken on an average. Poverty rate have declined between, the data pointers indicate they have declined significantly between 2004-5 to 2011-12 also. It is not as if for the first time the poverty rate has been declining. It has declined before. But this is showing a tangible evidence now. Now here we come to the fact that what are these committee recommendations for poverty? So the Tendulkar committee, which was set up in 1999, it followed the Lakdawala panel. Lakdawala panel talked about deciding the poverty based upon the consumer price index of agriculture workers, etc., agricultural laborers, etc., and thereby deciding upon the calorie intake, and based upon the calorie intake deciding a poverty line, that if you are consuming less than this, if the CPI is higher, this will be the poverty line. Now the Tendulkar committee basically discussed and described the India's poverty line as 446 rupees per capita per month in rural areas. If you are earning less than this, you were considered to be poor. This was the poverty line. Rupees 578 per capita per month in the urban areas. If you are earning less than this, you shall be considered poor. Right? Based upon various parameters, this was decided. Now, it also discussed and decided the poverty on the purchasing power parity terms to rupees 33 per day. So, if you are spending rupees 33 per day, basically you are at the poverty line. More than that, above poverty line. Now there was heavy criticism to the Tendulkar committee report because even as per the global standards, it talked about only rupees 33 per day, which is significantly lesser. But this was largely dependent on what you could get in India at rupees 33. Now for the measurement of poverty, how do you measure poverty? Whether an individual is poor or not, how will you decide that? Based upon what is the expenditure? For example, I as an individual, let's suppose in the past 30 months, I have spent on restaurants, I have spent on, let's suppose, buying myself some goods, clothes, etc. Then my expenditure is higher. I won't be considered poor. But if in the past 30 days, my expenditure has only been on food items and that has basically consumed my entire income, that means what? I am at the limit of that poverty line. So this poverty is measured based upon various different measuring points. For example, you have a parameter which is referred to as Uniform Resource Period or URP. Up till around 1993-94, this was the measurement parameter for deciding poverty. What is this measurement parameter of uniform resource period or uniform reference period rather? What is the measuring parameter here? The people are asked, the public is asked that in the past 30 days, what has been your expenditure? And that 30-day recall period is considered in order to understand where the expenditure is happening, how much expenditure is happening, how much is on nutrition, cereals, other goods, etc. And based on that, poverty levels are decided. So this overall had got a 30-day recall period. Means expenditure in the previous 30 days was computed. Expenditure in past 30 days was computed. Right? Now this is something which was used by the Lakdawala panel, and when it came to Tendulkar committee basically observed that look, the expenditure is never going to be uniform. You have, for example, expenditure on education. That is not something that you keep on doing every 30 days. That will be something that you will spend on maybe once in a year. But that cannot end up determining your expenditure every month. Your expenditure every month will be different. Your expenditure, let's suppose in education, healthcare, that cannot be a recurring thing. Right. So then mixed reference period or MRP, this was used by the Tendulkar committee. This was used by the Lakdawala panel. This was used by the Tendulkar committee. It talked about the fact that 5 low frequency items such as clothing, footwear, durables, education, institutional health expenditure, that is something that you don't do every month. It is not that every month you will buy clothes, every month you will buy footwear, every month you will buy consumer durables, every month you will spend in education. So for this, these 5 low frequency items, recall period was 1 year. Recall period of 1 year. And for rest of the items, the recall period of 30 days was considered. For rest of the items, 30-day period expenditure was considered. Okay, so basically Tendulkar committee decided this mixed reference period as a measure of understanding what is the expenditure. So why it is important to be discussed? Because when we say that as compared to Tendulkar committee, the poverty rate has gone significantly lower, etc. This is where MRP as a methodology of measurement of poverty was used. Right? So when you compare poverty in different eras, if the scale of measurement is the same, then you can compare. If let's suppose one follows URP, another follows MRP, then obviously the results will be different. Here, Tendulkar committee used MRP. But when the Rangarajan committee was set up, based upon the criticism, because around 2000, in the later parts of 2000, Planning Commission had come up with a kind of a report and a data that look, anybody earning rupees 22 and above on a daily basis will not be considered as poor. Now this created a national backlash and a national furor. That how come you are saying that anybody even earning rupees 23, they are not considered poor? How can we come to this? So the central government, bowing down to the public pressure, appointed the Rangarajan committee. Rangarajan committee did not even follow the MRP or the mixed reference period. Rangarajan committee devised what was referred to as the MMRP, that is modified mixed reference period. Now in this, just like in the mixed reference period, everything you are not spending on everything every month, you divide that. Right. In the case of the modified mixed reference period, you further divide it. So 365 days recall period for clothing, footwear, education, medical care and durable goods. 7-day recall period for edible oil, egg, fish, meat, vegetables, tobacco, intoxicants. 30 days for maintaining food items, fuel, light, miscellaneous goods, medicinal, etc. So like that, a variability was induced that your expenditure will be variable in terms of what you are spending on. Right. So that is how poverty was basically measured during the Rangarajan committee. But all these various measures of poverty, first of all, very importantly, what is going to be asked in the examination, if at all? For your prelims, you can have the relevance of what is URP, what is MRP, and what is MMRP. Okay, that can be put to use. So URP was used by the Lakdawala committee. Okay. Then mixed reference MRP by the Tendulkar committee to decide poverty. Then MMRP by the Rangarajan committee. Now the new household consumption expenditure survey, which was released by NSSO, that utilizes this modified mixed reference period, which basically tells us that rather than comparing the poverty rate with Tendulkar committee, we can compare it with the Rangarajan committee. So that is much more reliable. That is what the article tries to argue. That is why rather than getting entangled in the data there, you have to extract this crux. Okay, this is particular point which is relevant for the exam. Now, various researchers have also indicated, the researchers in the study that they have carried out based upon this household consumption expenditure survey, they have also concluded that look, when it comes to inequality, inequality is reducing. Okay, inequality is reducing in certain areas. Inequality in certain areas is also increasing. So that is largely indicated by what we refer to as the Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is the expression of inequality. So here it indicated that the Gini coefficient declined in areas. So Gini coefficient, when we say that the Gini coefficient has declined, what do we mean by that? So, Gini coefficient is a measure of the poverty, and the coefficient value varies between 0 and 1. So here, when we take a look at the Gini index, it is a measure of the distribution of income across the population. Its number varies between 0 to 1. 0 indicates no inequality. So if let's suppose in a population everybody is earning the same amount of money, then the Gini value will be 0. If let's suppose you have two people, one person is earning, other person is 0, then the Gini coefficient value will be 1. 1 indicating maximum inequality. So when the Gini value reduces, when the Gini coefficient value reduces, that means there is a reducing inequality. Inequality figures are going down. So the HCES, the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, has also indicated that the Gini value in the urban area, in the rural area also, they have been indicating a decline. Okay, so that is something you can extract. So a higher Gini index indicates greater inequality, with high income individuals receiving much more, and lower Gini value means lower inequality. Now overall, all this discussion about Tendulkar committee, Rangarajan committee, Lakdawala panel, before it confuses you out of proportion, a quick summarization of what we have discussed and what is relevant from this data-centric article which has appeared in the op-ed page. First of all, what is relevant? The Household Consumption Expenditure Survey released by NSSO. That is important. Who releases it? That has indicated that the poverty levels are going down. Now, when we say poverty levels are going down, how do we measure the poverty? So you compare it with maybe 2011-12 figures. But 2011-12 figures will be different as per the Tendulkar committee report, as per the Rangarajan committee report. What are these committee reports? So, in order to decide what is the poverty line, the government of India had appointed various committees and various panels in order to decide what income level should be considered and on what basis should we determine what is the poverty level. So the Tendulkar committee had basically marked a departure from the earlier measurement parameter, that was the uniform reference period. From that, it moved to the mixed reference period. And thereby it decided the poverty at the urban level, at the rural level, and also based on the purchasing power parity. Then you had the Rangarajan committee, which they took the route of mixed modified reference period, MMRP. That also indicated a variation in terms of the fact that your spending every month was different. So this was incorporated. Now, there is inequality also which is reducing as per the report. So a quick mind map about what you can extract from it. The household consumption survey, consumption expenditure survey as it is, right? Expenditure survey. So there are two things that you can extract from it. First thing, poverty is reducing. Then from here, what is the poverty line? So here you basically had various different parameters of measurement. One was the uniform reference period. This was followed by the Lakdawala panel. Now in this, 30-day recall period was considered for all goods. Then you had mixed reference period. That is MRP. This was followed by Tendulkar Committee. This followed 1 year recall for low frequency goods for 5 items, that is clothing, housing, footwear, durables, education and also institutional medicine. Then 30-day recall for the next, for rest. Then after that, you had mixed modified reference period. This was followed by Rangarajan panel, Rangarajan committee. And this talked about 365-day recall, 30-day recall and 7-day recall. Now the modern and the present household consumption expenditure survey, it follows the model of MMRP, which is similar to that of the Rangarajan measurement. And it also basically, this survey also indicates that inequality is reducing. Inequality is reducing. How do we know that? We know that with the help of Gini coefficient or Gini index. What do we know about Gini index? It varies between 0 to 1. 0 means no inequality and 1 means maximum inequality. But overall, the report is indicating in the broader terms that the poverty is decreasing across the country. That is what you can extract from this article. Now coming to the third article. So this is the final mind map that will help you understanding what are the various parameters and the measurements of poverty. Now, after that, we move to the third article, and third article talks about an overview of the smart cities mission. Now, cities and urban spaces, they have always captured our imagination in terms of what the city should be. Ever since basically the pictures and the videos have been made available that these are what some of the cities look like, that has basically been created as an impression that this is what the city should be. When a normal individual, let's suppose, when they see that, okay, this is how Shanghai looks, this is how New York looks, this is how London looks, then that is the urge, that is the basic ultimate desire. Now, the government also, for more than a decade now, has been planning to revitalize and re-energize the city infrastructure in India, which has been crumbling under its own weight. If you talk about Delhi, if you talk about Mumbai, if you talk about Bengaluru, if you talk about Chennai or Hyderabad or Kolkata, all the cities have been facing the similar kind of issues. Rising population, resources are not there, urban floods are happening, and the cities are unable to cater to the demands of the public. So that is where the previous government had launched the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Mission, JNNURM. Now, this mission was basically to revitalize the cities. But implementation was not happening at such a rapid scale as was required. That is when in the previous term this government, they launched the Smart City Mission with a lot of pomp and show and with an overall ambition that we will reinvigorate our cities will be converted into smart cities. So that is where the concept of smart cities came up. Now what were these smart cities? These were the modern day cities which could basically have a mobility solution rather than a transportation solution, a mobility solution. So first of all, very briefly, what is the difference between transportation and mobility? So understand that. So let's suppose you are an individual who is living at A. You have to go to your office which is present at B. So what do? From A you ride an auto. You go to the nearby bus stand or maybe the metro station. Let's suppose you have gone to the metro station. Now from there, the metro train takes you to the next metro station where you get down, catch an auto or a rickshaw or walk to B. So transportation system will be this particular portion where you are improving the metro connectivity. Urban mobility as a concept is that movement from A to B. That entire thing is looked at. That from A, how will you go to the metro station? Do we have proper transportation links or not? So the entire linkage is worked at. That is the mobility. ICT networks, information and communication technology, internet, IoT, everything was planned for these smart cities. And hence the name smart. Now these smart cities, they basically had two components. One was the area-based component. So the Smart City Mission. Smart City Mission. This was having two components. One was area-based development. Area-based development, developing certain factors or certain facets of the cities. Okay. So certain portions of the cities. So this included basically three parts: retrofitting, then re-establishment, and also the aspect of developing greenfield projects, newer water storage structures, newer filtration plants. Everything was something which came under area-based development. So it talked about redevelopment of various parts of the cities, older parts of the cities, retrofitting, and also greenfield projects. Greenfield projects means that you basically devise newer plans for development. New projects are what you initiate in that area for development where no project had existed earlier. That is the greenfield project development. Then you also had another aspect of here, and that was development of that ICT programs, information communication technology, and basically the usage of internet in order to revitalize the entire city structure. So that included 6 parts. So that was pan city development, the whole city to be developed. So in this you had 6 subcomponents. One was to improve e-governance, then to improve waste management, because solid waste is a major problem, then to improve energy management, then after that water management, then after that urban mobility, and also within the city to improve skill development. So these were the 6 sub-components which had to be worked upon. And this was the entire overview of the Smart City Mission, that in any city The areas which are older, dilapidated, broken, let's redevelop them. The drainage structures, the sewerage structures which are not up to the mark, up to the date, retrofit them, improve them. And greenfield projects, you have to implement them. And these, if you develop, the smart city will be developed. Now, there have been significant amount of money which has been spent over a period of last 10 years for this development to take place and for these various projects. But still the desired outcome is not what we see. Now, there have been various suggestions, recommendations that how the cities in urban area can improve, because that is a major problem, guys. Regardless of whichever part of the country you are living in, north, south, east, west, center, coastal, anywhere, the city that you are living in would be crumbling under your own pressure. Not your pressure per se, but the pressure of the population. So, why is it that this smart city mission could not take that fruit or could not take that benefit? So, the reasons, the issues first of all, issues plaguing this. First of all, there was no organic thinking process. That is what the article argues, that there was no organic thinking process in terms of the 100 cities which were initially selected to be the smart cities. So that organic selection was not there. So selection criteria was an issue. Selection of projects, where to be implemented, which project to be implemented, that was an issue. Then after that, there was an issue in the governance. What do we mean by that? Now, when we talk about urban areas are governed as per the 74th Amendment to the Indian Constitution. You have the wards and the municipalities which are responsible for the governance. Now, for the smart city mission, what was done? A special purpose vehicle was basically designed in order to implement quick and have a quick implementation and quick execution. A special purpose vehicle was designed, and this SPV would be headed by a bureaucrat, that is a district collector maybe, or maybe the head of a conglomerate of the private organization which is investing there. Public-private partnership as a model was sought to be implemented. But now, we can take a look at the data and we can see that only 5% of the money came through PPP mode. Most of the money which was put in was basically the government fund, right? So, failure of private participation. Failure of private participation and funding. Now, when you had this special purpose vehicle which was designed, SPV which was put into place, then that means the municipalities, they were excluded from that governance. So there was that conflict of interest that, okay, you implement, I will not implement, I will implement, you will not implement. So that tussle basically meant that the cities and the citizens, they lost out. So that is what had been a drawback. Then also, what are the objectives that you can attain out of it? That was also not clear. Now, while implementing this, there was a large-scale displacement. Almost around 50% of the urban population lives in slums. So there was a large-scale displacement, which again is not good for a city environment. Construction basically which took place in all the major cities, you would observe that the smart city construction has led to traffic jams, has led to various issues such as urban flooding and pollution as well. So this is what the drawbacks are. What are the way forward? So how is it that Indian cities can be reinvigorated? Way forward. First of all, amongst the drawback, one another thing that you have to consider is that every city has got a different DNA. A Varanasi, for example, cannot be developed at the same parameter like you are developing Bangalore. Both of them have different requirements. Both of them cater to different set of population also. In terms of Varanasi, for example, will require a more frequent and easy availability to open access spaces, that is the ghats and the pilgrimage centers. Easy commute in terms of walking ability. Now, the same thing is not required in Bangalore. In Bangalore, you need point A to point B connectivity in as quick time as possible. So, all the cities cannot be developed at the same template. So, this is an issue. So, you need to have different template for different cities. You need to establish a very clear-cut governance structure, a governance model. Right? You need to ensure that the basics such as waste management, water management, energy management, that is where the municipalities are accountable. Otherwise, it turns out to be that no one is accountable. Right? So these are few of the things that can be done going ahead. At your end, again think about it. What can be done at your end to improve the structure of your urban area? What do you think can be the solution? Put yourself in the shoes of the policymaker for a brief moment of time and think about it, that had you been the head of that special purpose vehicle, what is it that you would have done? If you were elected as the chairman of that smart city mission, what is it that you would have implemented to change your city? Think about an innovative idea, not the generic ideas that we have discussed. Think about something innovative. Put it in the comment section below. One of the most interesting ones which come up, we shall be discussing it in the CNA tomorrow. Now, that is what this article is about. In this article, we have discussed the concept of the smart city, what were the lacunae, and what can be done going ahead. Now we come to certain articles we will discuss very briefly for the aspect of prelims. Now here the first article which has appeared in page 1 talks about the food inflation. Even though overall inflation numbers across the country have indicated a decline, but when it comes to food inflation, that is rising up. Now, the numbers also indicate that the impact of inflation is much higher in the rural areas as compared to urban areas. In urban areas, the impact of inflation is not that much. Why this difference? That is because when we compute the inflation numbers in the rural areas, the weightage given to food products is much higher. Whereas when we compare the inflation numbers or compute the inflation numbers in urban areas, that weightage is less. But what are these inflation numbers? That is not relevant for your exam, because UPSC is never going to ask you that what was the inflation number in the month of March 2024. What you need to understand and look at is the trend. The trend is that inflation from the year of July has indicated a decline. But is it a continuous decline? The answer is no. UPSC previous year question, there is this question that the inflation for the growth of the past 10 years have indicated the continuous rise or continuous decline. Same is the case with inflation. So you have to know the trend. Another type of question which can be framed from here is the difference between headline and core inflation. Those are the those are the particular terminologies that also will frequent your analysis. So what is that headline inflation and how is it different from core inflation? So when we talk about headline inflation, for example, so it includes the overall inflationary figures, including the food and the energy prices. So obviously, it will be very volatile because food and energy prices are included. So energy prices, prices of fuel, etc., they keep on varying on a daily basis. Same is the case with food supply. So that is why it is very volatile. Volatile means very prone to change. Now, in developed countries, generally, you will find that the proportion of consumption of food and fuel in the overall basket mix is less. So in developed countries, it is generally less. But when it comes to developing countries, that is when headline inflation is much more relevant because it tells you a larger trend about the situation faced by the population. Population is going to be suffering significantly even if the food prices go up by 1 rupee. But in developed countries, if the food prices go up, let's suppose by $1, it might not have that much of an impact. So that is why headline inflation is much more relevant in developing economy as compared to developed economy. That is an extract. Now, core inflation. Core inflation does not include food and energy prices. So it ends up remaining consistent. It ends up indicating a kind of a stability. So this is more relevant in developed nations, right? It is more useful for developed economies. In developing countries, it is less useful because food and energy, they are consumed more in terms of the proportion of your overall spend. What is your overall monthly spend? Substantial portion of it you will be spending on food and fuel if you are in a developing or an underdeveloped country. So that is when the headline inflation comes to relevance. Okay, so that is what you can extract. This is important for your exam in prelims in particular. Now, here, before moving on to the next article, an announcement regarding the Unacademy Civil Services Championship. You have a free scholarship test which will be conducted on 19th of May at 11 a.m. and 5 a.m. There are exciting prizes on offer and 90% of scholarship to be won. So do participate in this. The questions will be at the standard of UPSC, so you can judge your overall level of understanding and your proficiency, and also more importantly, the areas that you have to work upon and the areas where there is a scope of improvement. Okay, so do appear for this free scholarship test and ensure maximum participation. Now, then another very important article, that is India and Iran. They signed the Chabahar Port Operation Pact. Now, after a very long period of time, since this Chabahar port and the deal was agreed between India and Iran, this pact has marked a momentous occasion. So much so that you can think about the importance of this, that in the midst of the election campaign and the electioneering process, you had Sarbananda Sonowal who traveled there, the minister traveled there in order to sign this. So it is being accorded a very high level of importance by India and the Ministry of External Affairs. Now basically, as per this new agreement has been signed between whom? It has been signed between India Ports Global Limited. India Ports Global Limited is an organization which was set up around 2015 in order to have the monitoring and controlling the operation of various ports being operated by India abroad. As India got into agreement with various countries like Myanmar for the operationalization of Sitwe port, with Iran for the operationalization of Chabahar port and operation of Dakkam port thereby in the same region. So like that is the purpose for the operational maintenance and management. IPGL, India Ports Global Limited, was established. So IPGL and Port and Maritime Organization, PMO Iran, they have basically signed a long-term agreement for the operational management and further expansion of the Shah Beheshti port in Chabahar region. So this is for the Shahid Beheshti port in the area. Now this is Iran's first deep water port. Deep water port means that larger vessels carrying greater amount of weight can come to that port. Now this is very important and relevant for India because development of this port ensures supply and connectivity to Central Asia. Central Asia, which is landlocked, is one of those unexplored trade potential regions where various countries, even Oman, India, all of them are interested to have the reach and connectivity to Central Asia in order to basically capture the market in order to improve the exports. So that is where India, Russia, Iran, they entered into INSTC, right, International North-South Transport Corridor, to provide access to Central Asia. Now, ever since that INSTC had been devised, various countries from Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, all of them, Oman, all of them have indicated the importance and their interest in joining them. They have joined them as well. Belarus is an observer nation. Latvia, Lithuania, they have also expressed interest that they want to join INSTC. But for that INSTC to work, this Chabahar port had been very important. Now, earlier, what was the issue? The issue which was present earlier was that earlier also India had a contract with Iran, but that contract was a short-term period. So that basically meant, owing to the global sanctions in Iran and India also having a short-term agreement, various private organizations, traders, merchants, they were not interested. They were wary. They were scared that maybe there is uncertainty around the project. Now, with the long-term agreement, a 10-year agreement with the clause for auto extension, that provides stability in terms of conditionality and put forwards and basically ignores all the uncertainty around the project, which will attract further investment and which will improve the trade. Now, Chabahar port has already been used by India in order to transport goods such as wheat, etc., to war-torn Afghanistan and improve its goodwill. So the potential is huge. It allows India to bypass the contentious region of Pakistan and carry out the trade. See, this is the INSTC, the International North-South Corridor. So this is the INSTC, which aims to transport goods from Mumbai into the Chabahar port now, from there via Iran into the Caspian all the way till St. Petersburg. Now, the nations, Baltic nations have also expressed the interest. Then you had the Central Asian nations, the East European nations, all of them interested to join this. So this has got a huge potential because of untapped market in these landlocked areas. So this Chabahar port opens up to the Gulf of Oman. That is relevant for your prelims, and INSTC also becomes relevant for your prelims. That what this INSTC is. As soon as this pact has been signed, immediately the US State Department has issued a kind of a warning to India that this can invite sanctions, because earlier also you had the case where the few of the Indian companies, they were sanctioned by US because of the trade deals with Iran. So it is very interesting to observe where this will go ahead moving forward. Okay, now UN-linked body defers accreditation of NHRC, National Human Rights Commission in India. So basically, you have the UN body, that is Global Alliance on National Human Rights Commission, right? Of National Human Rights institutions. Now this is GANHRI. This is a UN body, GANHRI, which provides the accreditation to the various human rights corporations across the world. Now, this body has basically decided not to provide accreditation to National Human Rights Commission in India, owing to the various reports and various complaints which have been given to this body by civil society organizations, NGOs, etc. They talk about the trampling of the minority rights and various different forms of exploitation, due to which this body has taken a stern stance. Officially, it has communicated that there are certain issues due to which this accreditation is not being provided to NHRC. Issues such as human rights violations are investigated by police officers, something which is not as per the global human rights norms. There's lack of representation in terms of minority and the weaker sections of the population. Based on these parameters, the accreditation has been denied. Now, this is the second time that it has happened. Earlier also, in 2017 also, this accreditation was not provided, it was delayed, and eventually a year later, the A-level accreditation was provided. But then, this time, if let's suppose that accreditation is revoked, India's NHRC is not provided that accreditation, then what it can entail is that India won't be allowed to participate in the global human rights commissions, the UN human rights commissions. It will not be allowed to vote and take part in various bodies of UN General Assembly. Depending upon wherever human rights are involved, India will be ostracized. So for your prelims, what is this GANRI? It was established in 1993 as International Coordinating Committee for National Institutions for the Protection of Human Rights. So it is basically known as GANRI since 2016 and is a member-based network organizations which gathers national human rights institutions from all across the world. Secretariat is situated in Switzerland, and this follows basically the Paris Principles. The Paris Principles, they were laid out by the UN, and it set out 6 main criteria that national human rights institutes are required to meet. So these Paris Principles deal with human rights. Okay? Again, relevant for your prelims. So here, basically, what are these 6 principles? Mandate and competence, autonomy from government, independence guaranteed by a statute of constitution, pluralism, adequate resources, and adequate powers of investigation. This should be there with the national human rights commissions of each of the countries. Only then accreditation should be provided as per the Paris Principles. If this does not happen, that is when the accreditation is delayed. But many of the times it has been observed that it is a kind of a political ploy and political pressure imposed by various other nations in order to delay that accreditation. Now, then IMF warns Maldives of debt distress with more Chinese loans in the offing. So the International Monetary Fund has asked the new or warned the new government of Maldives that while you are taking easy loans from China, and China has basically observed the India Out campaign by the Mohammad Muizzu government, and they have further capitalized on that by promising more amount of fund, more amount of money which can be given to them. And that is where Maldives, IMF has warned, can go to the route and in the same route as Sri Lanka and can face significant economic crisis along the way. And that is what Maldives has to be wary of. It is again another form of predatory economics being followed by China. Then after that, we come to the next article. Indonesia's Mount Ibu erupts again. Now here, where is Mount Ibu? It is situated in the eastern part of Indonesia. It is where you have the convergence of the Pacific Sea floor with the Caroline Sea plate. So there is an oceanic convergence which happens, and this is a stratovolcano. It is active and it is a stratovolcano, very significantly larger in size. Okay, it has been active for the past few years because of subduction of the Pacific Sea floor. It is around this Malacca Sea and the Sulawesi Sea where you have series of volcanic arcs and island arcs created, and Mount Ibu is one of them. So the location where it is surrounded by Sulawesi, Java Sea, then you have the Banda Sea, and then you have the Pacific floor and the Pacific Ocean. Then coming to the last article, Semal trees are being wiped out in Rajasthan due to Udaipur's Holi. So while this article talks about that tradition of Holika Dahan and learning or burning a pyre, burning a large bonfire before the festival of Holi. So in the region of Udaipur, these Semal trees, that is around which this bonfire is lit, due to which these trees are slowly and steadily being wiped out from the region. First things first for the portion of prelims. Semal tree comes under which category? It comes under moist deciduous. Moist deciduous kind of forests. Where is moist deciduous in India found? In patches where there is higher amount of moisture, 120 to 140 centimeter ideally of rainfall every year, moist deciduous will grow. Found in the regions of Western Ghats, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and also the foothills of Himalayas in the Tarai belt. Now this Semal tree is referred to as the one tree biosphere or one tree sanctuary because of the various implications. For example, it nests, basically it can hold the entire ecosystem together. So first of all, you have the rock bees. Rock bees, basically they use that flower for the nectar, right? And the thorns and the spikes which are present in the tree structure, that is used to ward off the sloth bear, the predators for these rock bees. And then the roots are basically consumed by the local population. Roots consumed by local population. By local population. Okay, other than that, you also have the Indian crested porcupine and the Hanuman langurs. They also benefit from the flowers and the nectar of the flowers. So that is where you have multifarious usage. It is also something, a tree which can grow even in dry deciduous areas. So it has cross growth pattern there. So that is what you can extract for your prelims. That is what completes our discussion. Now let us take a look at the questions. Discuss the issues plaguing the Indian cities. Analyze the reasons behind the limited success of the Smart City mission. This is a 15-marker question. So what do you frame in the introduction? Introduction has to address the basic subject and discuss the issues plaguing the Indian cities. So do you start the introduction directly by the fact that Indian cities, they are facing this? No. India is experiencing a rapid rate of urbanization where, as per the latest reports, close to around 35 to 40% of Indian population is moving into the cities, where now India has got more than 10,000 urban centers and growing rapidly. That will be your brief introduction. That will tell the evaluator that you are analyzing the situation of urbanization and already indicate the problem of rapid urbanization. Then that will set the context for the main body, where you talk about the fact that urban cities and cities in India are plagued with issue of overburdening population, mismanagement of resources, poor conditions of waste management, which gives rise to areas of slums, poor hygiene, environmental concerns, etc. Now, the rejuvenation and revitalization of these cities has been the mainstay and the agenda for various successive governments in play, and that is where programs such as Jawaharlal National Urban Rejuvenation Mission and also the Smart City Mission have been basically implemented. However, these particular schemes have met with limited amount of success owing to the various different lacunae which can be analyzed in the following manner. That will set the first part of the body. After that, analyze the issues with the Smart City Mission, talk about the various parts of it in the flowchart, talk about why it could not succeed, talk about eventually that what is the way forward. And eventually in the conclusion you have to write, as India marches on into the 21st century with the youthful population on the rise, Indian cities have to take the lead. That means not only revitalizing and re-energizing the existing cities, but also creating new greenfield urban spaces and urban cities to capture and give direction to the modern Indian dream. That is how you can conclude the answer. Okay. try to write that answer and get it evaluated. Discuss the relevance of Nepal in India's foreign policy doctrine. What are the issues which hold the relation back, and suggest the measures to improve the same. So India's foreign policy doctrine for this government has been neighborhood first. So Nepal, being an important neighbor, has got significant cultural, traditional and people-to-people ties going back centuries. Indian government has enjoyed a particular, and Indians have enjoyed a particular goodwill in the region of Nepal. That will be the introduction. Talk about the issues that this particular relationship is facing and what can be done going ahead. Whatever we have discussed in the article, you can express that. Eventually, in the conclusion, talk about that India cannot fathom to be a future power in the Asian region unless and until the neighborhood has got good relation. That is why it is imperative to iron out the differences and embark on a new journey for a better Indo-Nepalese ties. Okay, so that will be all for the discussion here today. I hope the session was helpful and you have gained some vital insights. Try writing the answers, revise this. And if you have liked the content, please don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button. Till we meet again tomorrow, take care of yourself. Goodbye. Thank you.